I still remember the night I first slept alone. Not because the house was quiet, not because I could not sleep, but because I reached my hand across the bed in the dark and touched nothing. After 50 years of marriage, your body remembers things before your mind does. Maybe you understand this feeling. I'm Patricia Warren. I'm 81 years old. I spent most of my life as a church volunteer in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I was the kind of woman who always stayed busy. I baked for church gatherings. I organized charity drives. I remembered birthdays. I ironed tablecloths before family dinners. I liked taking care of people, especially my husband. His name was Richard. Richard worked as an electrician almost his whole life. He was one of those men who rarely sat still. His hands always needed something to fix. Even after retirement, he would walk around with a screwdriver in his pocket, like an old habit he forgot to quit. He was a good man, not a perfect man, just a good one. There's a difference. People think long marriages survive because of big moments, anniversaries, vacations, romantic surprises. But I think marriages survive because of tiny things. The way someone clears snow off your car, the way they remember how you take your coffee, the sound of their footsteps coming through the front door every evening. You stop noticing these things while they are happening, until one day they stop, and then silence becomes louder than anything. Richard and I had 2 children, Emily and Jason. Emily lived in Chicago with her husband and children. Jason moved to Arizona years ago. Life pulled everyone in different directions. That's normal. Children grow, families spread out, and eventually, houses become quieter. At our age, you learn to live with quiet, or at least you think you do. About 8 years ago, Richard started sleeping in the guest room. Not because we fought. People always assume that. No, it started because of his back pain. He said our mattress made it worse. He joked that the guest room bed felt like heaven. I remember laughing. Fine, I told him, but don't get too comfortable. I thought it would last a week, maybe 2. Instead, weeks became months. Months became years. Funny how distance enters quietly. At first, nothing changed. We still had breakfast together, still watched television at night, still argued about small things. Richard hated when I turned the thermostat up. I hated when he left coffee cups everywhere. Normal marriage things. But something slowly changed. Not outside, inside. I remember one winter evening especially. Snow covered the backyard. I was standing at the kitchen window washing dishes. Richard sat in the living room watching an old Western. Neither of us said anything for almost an hour. Not because we were angry, not because anything happened. We just sat there, quiet. 2 people sharing a room, but somehow not sharing a moment. I looked at his reflection in the window, and suddenly a strange thought entered my mind. When did we stop talking? Not practical talking. Not, did you pay the water bill? Jason called. We need milk. I mean real talking. The kind people do when they still want to know each other. I could not remember. That thought scared me, but I pushed it away because after 50 years of marriage, you tell yourself silence is normal. Maybe this is just aging. Maybe this is what long marriages become. Comfort, routine, quiet. I convinced myself everything was fine. Then small things started happening, tiny things. Richard stopped saying goodnight, not on purpose. I think he simply forgot. He started falling asleep in his chair downstairs. Sometimes I would wake up around midnight and hear the television still running. I would walk downstairs, and there he'd be, head tilted, blanket across his chest, soft snoring. For a moment, I would stand there watching him, then turn off the TV, cover his shoulders better, and whisper, "Come to bed," even though I knew he wouldn't, even though I knew his bed wasn't beside mine anymore. Funny, isn't it? Sometimes we continue old habits long after things change. One night I heard his truck pull into the driveway late. Even after retirement, Richard sometimes helped old friends with repair jobs. I looked at the clock, 9:47 p.m. I remember because I stared at those red numbers for a long time. I heard him come inside, set his keys down, open the refrigerator, close it, then silence. I waited. I thought maybe he would come upstairs, maybe sit beside me, maybe say something, anything. Instead, I heard the guest room door close. I don't know why, but tears suddenly filled my eyes. Not big crying, just quiet tears, the kind that surprise you, because nothing terrible happened, and maybe that was the problem. Nothing happened. Nothing changed dramatically. No betrayal, no screaming, no divorce, just distance, slow distance, the kind you barely notice while it's happening. Some marriages do not break suddenly. Sometimes they fade quietly. Maybe you have felt this too. The next morning, I made breakfast like always. Toast, eggs, coffee. Richard walked in wearing that old blue sweater he loved. He smiled. "Morning, Pat," like everything was normal. I smiled back, but something inside me felt different. I looked across the table and realized something painful. I missed him, and he was sitting right in front of me. That was the first time I admitted it to myself. I had started feeling lonely inside my own marriage, and I had no idea what to do with that feeling. Because after 50 years together, how do you tell someone you've quietly started losing each other? After that morning, I started noticing things I had ignored before. Not because Richard changed overnight, because once your heart sees something, it becomes hard to unsee. I watched him differently, at breakfast, during dinner, while we sat in the living room at night. I noticed how often silence sat between us. Not peaceful silence, not comfortable silence, a different kind. The kind that feels like two people standing on opposite sides of a river, still seeing each other, still loving each other maybe, but somehow too far apart to reach. One Tuesday afternoon, I was putting groceries away when I found a folded receipt in Richard's jacket pocket. Nothing suspicious, just hardware store items. Screws, paintbrushes, light bulbs, normal things. But what caught my eye was the date, 3 days earlier. I looked at the receipt and frowned. Because 3 days earlier, Richard told me he spent the afternoon fishing with his friend Tom. I remember standing there in the kitchen, holding that small piece of paper. Not because I thought he was cheating. At our age, your mind does not jump there first. No, what hurt was simpler. Why lie? Even about something small. I folded the receipt again and put it back, but the thought stayed with me. That night we sat watching television, a game show Richard liked. I stared at the screen but heard none of it. Finally, I asked quietly, "Did you have fun fishing Saturday?" He looked over, for a second, just 1 second. But after 50 years, 1 second can say a lot. "Oh yeah," he said. Then he looked back at the television. That was all. No story, no details, nothing. And suddenly I remembered a different Richard, a younger Richard, a man who used to come home excited over little things. He once spent 20 minutes telling me about catching a tiny fish. 20 minutes. Now I could barely get 20 words. I told myself not to overthink it. People get older, people get quieter. But deep down, something felt wrong. Days passed, then weeks. Life kept moving, because life always does. Emily called often. Jason called when he remembered. Church meetings came and went. Laundry piled up. Dishes needed washing. The ordinary things kept happening. But loneliness has a strange way of following you. Even in busy moments. Especially in busy moments. One evening, Emily invited me to dinner. Just me. Richard said he was tired, said he wanted to stay home. I almost stayed too, but Emily insisted. "Mom," she said, "I miss having you to myself sometimes." So I went. Her house felt loud, grandchildren running, music playing, dogs barking, life everywhere. I remember sitting at the table watching everyone talk, watching little arguments over mashed potatoes, watching people laugh, and suddenly my chest hurt. Not physically, emotionally. Because I realized something. Noise and closeness are not the same thing. But sometimes noise hides loneliness. When Emily drove me home, she glanced at me, then glanced again. Mothers notice things, but daughters do too. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled. "I'm fine." Old women say that a lot. We become experts at it. "Fine, fine, fine." Then she asked softly, "How's Dad?" Such a simple question, but I stared out the window. Streetlights passed slowly. I watched houses blur by, and for a moment I thought about lying. Instead I said, "I don't know." Emily looked surprised. I think I surprised myself too, because it was true. I didn't know. I knew his routines. I knew his favorite pie. I knew he liked extra blankets even during spring. I knew he hated tomatoes. But I suddenly realized I didn't know what he felt anymore. Didn't know what he worried about. Didn't know if he was happy. Didn't know if he felt lonely too. Imagine spending 50 years beside someone and realizing you no longer know where their heart lives. That thought followed me home. Richard was asleep in his recliner when I walked inside, television glowing softly, mouth slightly open, one hand resting on his chest. I stood there looking at him, and for a moment I saw both versions of him, the man sitting there and the young man I married, the man who danced with me barefoot in our kitchen, the man who once drove 3 hours just because I said I missed him, the man who cried when Emily was born, the man who used to pull me close in bed during thunderstorms. I missed him so suddenly it almost knocked the air out of me. I sat down quietly beside him. He didn't wake up. I looked at his hands, older now, veins visible, skin thinner, hands that built our shelves, fixed bicycles, held babies, held me. and something happened I had not expected. I got angry. Not angry at Richard, angry at us. Angry that somewhere along the road we stopped protecting what mattered. We took comfort in routine and confused them with closeness. We assumed love would keep running on its own, like a clock hanging on a wall. But marriages are not clocks. You cannot hang them up and expect them to keep working forever. They need attention, even after 50 years, especially after 50 years. Richard suddenly opened his eyes, looked at me, blinking, confused. "Pat?" I quickly smiled. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." He looked at me for a moment, longer than usual, then quietly asked, "You been crying?" I froze, because I had. I just didn't realize it. I looked away immediately. Funny how after 50 years of marriage, I could still feel shy around him. I wiped under my eyes and forced a small smile. "No," I said, "just tired." Richard kept looking at me, not at the television, not toward the kitchen, at me. And something about that unsettled me, because it had been a long time since I felt truly seen by him. Then he said quietly, "Patricia, not Pat, Patricia." He only used my full name when something mattered. I felt my stomach tighten. "What is it?" I asked. For a few seconds, he said nothing. The television kept playing in the background. Some audience somewhere laughed. Outside, wind brushed softly against the windows. Then Richard sighed. "I know things have felt different." Simple words, but they landed heavily, because suddenly all the things we never talked about were sitting there between us. All those silent dinners, all those nights sleeping apart, all those little moments we ignored. I stared at him. I wanted to say something, but where do you even begin after years of silence? Do you start with loneliness? With hurt? With fear? I didn't know, so I stayed quiet, and Richard looked down at his hands. "I thought I was protecting you." I frowned. "Protecting me from what?" He rubbed his palms together slowly, a nervous habit I hadn't seen in years. Then he looked up, and I noticed something immediately. Fear. Not in his words, in his eyes. Real fear. My heart started beating harder. Then he said, "I didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what?" For a second, my mind went everywhere. Health, money, something terrible. I suddenly felt cold. Then Richard stood up, walked slowly toward the guest room, and came back holding a folder. Just a plain brown folder, nothing special. But I remember staring at it like it carried the weight of the world. He sat beside me, placed it in my hands, and quietly said, "Open it." My fingers shook. I remember that clearly. Old hands, small tremors, because deep down, I think part of me already knew. Not exactly what, just that something had been living in our house besides silence, something hidden. Inside the folder were papers, medical papers, test results, appointments, doctor names. I stared at them, then stared again. The words blurred, until one sentence finally settled in my mind. Early stage heart failure. I looked at Richard, then back down, then at him again. No. Just one word. That was all I could say. No. Because sometimes your heart rejects reality before your mind accepts it. Richard looked down. I found out almost a year ago. A year. One whole year. I felt something break inside me. Not because he was sick, because he carried it alone. A whole year. Doctor visits, tests, fear, and I never knew. Suddenly everything connected. The distance, the guest room, the silence, the late nights, the strange sadness in him. The missing pieces finally fit, and somehow that hurt even more. I looked at him and whispered, "Why?" My voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" Richard stared ahead, toward nothing, then said quietly, "Because I watched your mother take care of your father." Silence. I watched her disappear. I said nothing, because I remembered. Of course I remembered. My father got sick years ago, and my mother slowly stopped being herself. Everything became medicine schedules, hospital rooms, stress, exhaustion, caregiving. She loved him deeply, but she carried everything, until there was barely anything left of her. Richard swallowed hard. I promised myself I wouldn't do that to you. I just stared at him, and suddenly I understood. Not all distance comes from lack of love. Sometimes distance comes from fear. Fear wears strange disguises. Silence, withdrawal, avoiding eye contact, sleeping in another room. Sometimes people pull away because they think they are protecting the people they love. And suddenly all my anger disappeared. Not all of it. Some hurt remained. But underneath it, I saw him. Not the quiet man in the guest room. Not the stranger sitting across breakfast tables. I saw Richard, scared, tired, alone. And suddenly I realized something painful. I had spent months feeling lonely. while the man I loved had been carrying fear all by himself. Maybe you understand this feeling. Sometimes two people can sit beside each other, both hurting, both scared, and neither knows the other is drowning. Tears rolled down my face. Real tears this time, not hidden ones, not quiet ones. Richard looked at me, and suddenly he looked older than I had ever seen him, smaller somehow, more fragile. He whispered, "I'm sorry." 3 words, soft words, 50 years together, and somehow those 3 words carried years inside them. Then he looked away and said, "I didn't want you watching me disappear." My heart broke, because he thought he already was. And for the first time in years, I reached for his hand. I reached for his hand, and for a second, Richard looked surprised. Not because I touched him, because of how long it had been. That realization hurt more than I expected. 50 years together, and somehow even simple touch had become rare. His hand felt cold, older, thinner, but familiar. So familiar. I held it tighter, and suddenly all the words I had been carrying for months came rushing forward. Not perfectly, not beautifully, just honestly. "I thought I lost you." Richard looked down. I kept talking, because after years of silence, once the truth begins, it does not stop easily. "I thought you stopped needing me. I thought maybe you were tired of us. I thought I was sitting beside someone who didn't want me there anymore." My voice shook. "I felt lonely, Richard." Silence. Then I whispered, "Inside my own marriage." He closed his eyes, not dramatically, just quietly, like those words hurt him. And maybe they did, because sometimes the truth arrives late, but it still arrives. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The television kept playing. Cars passed outside. Somewhere upstairs, the old hallway clock ticked. Life kept moving, just like it always had. Then Richard squeezed my hand, very gently, and said something I still think about today. "Patricia, I was lonely too." I stared at him, because loneliness had felt like my secret, my burden, my sadness. I never imagined he had been standing in the same darkness, maybe on the other side of it, but there too. Then he looked at me and smiled sadly. "You were right beside me, and I missed you." I cried harder after that, not because of heartbreak, because of relief, because after all those months of feeling invisible, I suddenly realized I had not been alone. We had simply gotten lost, and people get lost sometimes, even after 50 years. Especially after 50 years. The next morning, something unusual happened. Richard was already sitting at the kitchen table when I came downstairs. 2 coffee cups sat there, mine and his, steam rising from both. I smiled. "You made coffee?" He shrugged. "Tried to." I took 1 sip and laughed immediately. It was terrible, absolutely terrible. Too strong, barely drinkable. Richard looked offended. I followed instructions. I laughed harder. Real laughter, the kind that surprises you. And suddenly, he laughed too. For a moment, we looked younger, not outside, inside. That morning, we talked for almost 2 hours. Not bills, not grocery lists, not doctor appointments. Us. We talked about things we had forgotten, fears, memories, regrets. Richard admitted he had been terrified, not of dying, of becoming a burden, of watching me slowly become exhausted. I admitted I had spent months wondering whether love had quietly left our house. We cried, we laughed, we sat quietly. But this silence felt different. Warm silence, connected silence, not empty silence. Over the next weeks, small things changed, very small things. But marriages are built from small things. Richard moved back into our room. Not every night. His back still bothered him. Some nights the guest bed really was easier, but now he asked, "Mind if I stay beside you tonight?" And every time I smiled. We started taking short walks, slow walks, very slow, old people walks. We held hands sometimes, not always, but sometimes, and somehow that felt enough. One evening we sat on the porch watching the sunset, orange light across the trees, quiet neighborhood, birds settling into evening. Richard looked ahead and asked, "Do you ever get scared?" I looked at him. He kept watching the sky, about what's coming. I knew what he meant. At our age, you understand what people mean without words. I sat quietly, then said, "Yes," because truth becomes simpler when you get older. Yes, I get scared. I get scared of empty chairs. I get scared of quiet houses. I get scared of sleeping alone. And maybe that is the truth I wanted to share. The truth about sleeping alone after 50 years of marriage is not really about beds or blankets or empty space beside you. It's about missing ordinary things: footsteps, coffee cups, arguments over thermostats, the sound of someone clearing their throat downstairs, tiny things you never notice until life changes. At this age, silence feels louder, and love feels smaller in some ways, but deeper too. Because after enough years, love becomes less about excitement, less about grand moments. It becomes presence, just presence. Someone sitting beside you, someone asking if you slept okay, someone existing in the same quiet world. Richard passed away 2 years later, peacefully, one winter morning. And yes, now I sleep alone, for real this time. Some nights I still reach across the bed without thinking. Some habits live longer than people. But I want to say this: if someone you love still sits across from you, talk, ask questions, sit beside them, hold their hand. Do not assume there will always be more time, because sometimes distance enters quietly, and sometimes love needs help finding its way back. Maybe you understand this feeling, and maybe tonight, before sleep, you should reach for the hand still beside you, before silence becomes all that's left.